Silence is often mistaken for peace, but in the mind of a quiet child, silence is a battlefield. Every unspoken word becomes a screen turned inward, shaping a personality built on observation, self-censorship, and invisible pain. You think quietness means control, but what if it's actually the sound of disintegration? It begins before language. A child learns that noise invites attention, and attention invites scrutiny. So they retreat, wrapping themselves in silence like a shield. Psychologists call it selective mutism, when the world becomes too large, too sharp, too demanding for words. But it's not only fear, it's strategy. The quiet child studies expressions, catalogs micro-reactions, learns the unspoken code of approval. They survive not by speaking, but by vanishing into awareness. Over time, they confuse observation with safety, believing understanding others will protect them from being seen. Yet each glance inward reveals only static, an echo chamber of suppressed thoughts. When every sound feels like a confession, how long before silence becomes your only language? You start to see too much. The quiet child becomes hypervigilant, a nervous system trained to predict every flicker of mood, every possible rejection. In psychology, it's called emotional attunement, but when sharpened by fear, it mutates into hyper-awareness. You learn to read faces before they speak, to sense tension before it breaks. But awareness isn't understanding, it's absorption. You begin carrying other people's emotions as if they were your own, mistaking empathy for responsibility. Each smile feels rehearsed, each silence a warning. You become the mirror everyone gazes into, reflecting their chaos without revealing your own. And slowly, your identity starts to dissolve into the perceptions of others. When you've memorized everyone else's emotions, what's left of your own? Quietness earns praise. So well behaved, so thoughtful. You learn that invisibility is rewarded, that compliance equals love. This is operant conditioning, the mind reshaped through reinforcement. You begin chasing the soft dopamine drip of approval, not joy. The self becomes transactional. Every smile a currency, every silence a bargain. But inside, resentment ferments. You start measuring your worth by how little space you occupy. And when you try to speak, your own voice sounds foreign, intrusive, almost shameful. You've trained yourself to mistake submission for harmony, and now even freedom feels like guilt. If the world only loves you when you're quiet, who are you allowed to be when you finally make a sound? In stillness, you begin to split. One part of you acts, the other watches. It's a form of dissociation, subtle and efficient, a survival mechanism disguised as self-awareness. You narrate your life as though it belongs to someone else, analyzing every move before it happens. People call you introspective, wise beyond your years. But the truth is simpler. You're afraid to exist without supervision. You hover above your own body, judging, editing, rehearsing. Reality becomes filtered through an inner commentator that never stops whispering, "Be careful." You no longer live experiences. You study them, trapped behind the glass of your own mind. If you are always watching yourself, are you ever truly alive inside your own skin? Silence outside doesn't mean silence inside. The quiet child grows older, and the mind becomes deafening. Thoughts loop in spirals, rumination, psychologists call it. Every memory replays with forensic precision, every mistake examined under a cruel microscope. You develop an internal dialogue that never pauses, a relentless commentary that substitutes for real conversation. Overthinking becomes your heartbeat. The mind feeds on itself, mistaking anxiety for insight. The more you think, the less you live, and yet you can't stop. You crave understanding, but understanding only multiplies the noise. You wanted control. Instead, you built an echo chamber of analysis and regret. When your thoughts never stop speaking, who is left to listen? To survive, you become useful. You learn that competence earns safety, that being capable keeps you untouched. In psychological terms, it's compensatory perfectionism, a shield against vulnerability. You master tasks, anticipate needs, and polish your image until it gleams with false security. People start relying on you, and their dependence feels like love. But underneath, it's hollow. Your worth is built on performance, not presence. Every success tightens the cage, because stopping would expose how fragile it all is. You've turned self-improvement into self-erasure, a constant audition for approval that never ends. When your value depends on perfection, what happens the day you finally fail? You've built your identity out of invisibility, and now the thought of being seen feels like exposure therapy without consent. Psychologists might call it intimacy anxiety, a fear of being truly known. You crave connection, but recoil when it approaches. Every question feels like intrusion, every compliment like interrogation. You've hidden behind competence and calm for so long that authenticity feels dangerous. Vulnerability, once a natural impulse, now triggers panic. You watch others share themselves freely and wonder what it would be like to exist without disguise. But you can't risk it. Because to be known is to be touchable, and to be touchable is to be DECROYABLE. If the mask keeps you safe, why does it also suffocate you? When you repress what's unbearable, it doesn't disappear, it leaks. What you can't face in yourself, you begin to see in others. This is projection, one of the oldest defense mechanisms in psychology. You accuse people of being distant, selfish, cold, never realizing you're describing your own reflection. The world becomes a hall of mirrors, each face echoing your own hidden traits. You stop trusting others because they start resembling the parts of you you've buried. You think you're perceiving reality, but you're only decoding fragments of your own denial. You mistake your reflection for threat, your shadow for enemy. When every person you meet carries a piece of your disowned self, who exactly are you running from? You've learned to manage chaos by tightening your grip. Control becomes your religion, every routine, every plan, every silence, a prayer to predictability. Psychologists call it cognitive control bias, the illusion that safety can be engineered through discipline. But control isn't peace. It's tension disguised as order. You micromanage emotions, censor impulses, avoid uncertainty like fire. Yet the tighter you hold, the more life resists you. The world begins to feel hostile because it refuses to obey your rules. Deep down, you know it's not the world you're trying to control. It's the terror of your own unpredictability. If you could finally let go, would anything real be left to catch you? You measure yourself against everyone else, endlessly, unconsciously. Psychologists call it social comparison theory, a mechanism meant to guide learning, now a chain that binds you. Each glance at another person becomes a verdict too loud, too confident, too free. You catalog successes you haven't achieved and punish yourself for the small victories you have. Even your inner critic borrows its language from others' imagined judgments. Achievement feels hollow because it is always relative. Satisfaction is impossible because it requires the world to bend to your perception. You live in a constant state of self-assessment, and the mirror never lies. Yet it always betrays. When every accomplishment is a reminder of inadequacy, how do you even recognize yourself? Every moment stretches into the next as a series of threats. The quiet child grows into a mind shackled by anticipatory anxiety, a constant rehearsal of disasters that may never come. You predict conversations, failures, mistakes, and heartbreaks with obsessive precision. Life becomes a series of what-ifs, and the present dissolves into a rehearsed future. You prepare endlessly, but preparation is just a thin veil over paralysis. Action feels dangerous because uncertainty is unbearable. Every choice is haunted by imagined consequences, every pause heavy with dread. You are alive, yet trapped in a pre-written script of fear. If the future is always a threat, what does it mean to actually live today? You have learned to suppress wants, needs, and impulses. Psychologists describe this as inhibitory control, a mechanism meant to delay gratification, but when overused, it erodes the soul. Desire becomes shameful, a luxury too dangerous to indulge. You watch others pursue passions, relationships, experiences, and feel a cold admiration that masks envy and guilt. Every craving you ignore whispers like a ghost, echoing in your ribcage until it becomes indistinguishable from emptiness. You crave even the act of craving, but even that is denied. Life becomes a void punctuated by longing you cannot act upon, a theater of restraint where your own heart is the audience and the victim. When you are denied even your own desires, who is left inside you to feel anything at all? Decades of retreating into invisibility create a reflex. Psychologists call this avoidant personality tendencies, a life built on disappearing before confrontation, on evading scrutiny before it lands. You have become fluent in absence, physical, emotional, and intellectual. Your presence is optional, your opinions silent, your emotions private. You wear masks so convincingly that even you forget what lies beneath. Every interaction becomes a negotiation. How much to reveal, how much to suppress, how little to risk. And yet, the very act of hiding shapes who you are, sculpting a self that is half reality, half shadow, a ghost inhabiting its own flesh. If hiding keeps you safe, what does it cost to exist at all? Your mind is a mirror turned inward, a place where every thought is scrutinized, every feeling dissected. Psychologists recognize this as metacognition, but in your case, it has become tyranny. You judge yourself with relentless precision, measuring each impulse, each word, each glance. Regret multiplies, guilt accumulates, and self-criticism becomes the only constant companion you trust. You try to quiet it, but every attempt to silence the internal jury only amplifies it. Reflection, once a tool for insight, has become a cage, a labyrinth with no exit, where the only voices you hear are your own accusations. When every thought is a verdict, who is left to pass judgment on your existence? The quiet child you once were now exists alongside countless versions of yourself. Psychologists call this identity diffusion, a splintering where the self becomes a collection of roles, masks, and adaptations. You are the observer, the perfectionist, the pleaser, the analyst, all vying for dominance, none fully real. Choices feel like negotiations between fragments, and certainty is impossible because every fragment whispers contradictions. You can never trust yourself completely. Even introspection becomes a tool of suspicion. Reality folds in on you, not because the world changes, but because the mind is no longer a unified lens. If your self is scattered into pieces, which part, if any, is truly you? To exist fully is to risk exposure, yet your mind craves observation. Psychologists describe this as existential anxiety, the tension between wanting to be known and fearing it. Every step into presence feels like stepping off a cliff. You rehearse words, gestures, even emotions before allowing them into the world. People see competence, calm, or charm, but never the trembling mind behind it. You become an actor trapped on an invisible stage, performing life while the real you hides backstage, silent and watchful. Presence, once natural, is now a calculated gamble where vulnerability always threatens collapse. If appearing real risks destruction, is invisibility the only true sanctuary? Your past speaks with relentless clarity. Psychologists identify autobiographical memory as the foundation of identity, but for you, it is a prison. Every mistake, every humiliation, every ignored cry of your younger self reverberates endlessly. Memories are no longer static, they are active predators, shaping your present with accusations you cannot escape. You try to reason, to reframe, to forgive, but the echoes ignore logic. They amplify fear, shame, and regret, turning even minor events into monumental evidence of inadequacy. You live not in the now, but under the constant judgment of your own history. When every memory condemns you, can you ever step into the present without fear? You convince yourself that planning, analyzing, and restraining impulses will protect you. Psychologists call this illusion of control, a cognitive bias that convinces the mind it can master uncertainty. Yet life refuses obedience. Every calculated step meets randomness, every preparation meets chaos. The more you attempt mastery, the more fragile you feel, as if the world itself conspires against your designs. Control becomes a ritual, a desperate attempt to tether yourself to sanity, while reality slips through your fingers. You are both architect and victim of a fortress that cannot hold. If the structures you build to survive only crumble, what remains when the walls fall? Your quiet has protected you, refined you, and yet imprisoned you. Psychologists describe introversion as energy drawn from solitude, but for you, solitude is a double-edged blade. Each moment alone sharpens perception and insight, yet simultaneously erodes connection, intimacy, and authenticity. Silence has become a mirror reflecting fears you cannot speak, desires you cannot act upon, and a self that exists more in observation than in experience. You are endlessly aware, endlessly analyzing, yet perpetually absent from life itself. The world moves around you while you catalog it, untouched, unjoined, unseen dot if the very thing that kept you safe also isolates you. How long before the quiet becomes your cage? Now look at yourself. Every adaptation, every suppression, every hyper-aware glance has brought you here, trapped inside a mind that observes endlessly but participates sparingly. Psychologists might call it chronic self-surveillance, a life lived as a case study of yourself, where thought devours action and reflection devours presence. You have mastered silence, perfected avoidance, curated competence, but at what cost? Identity has fractured, desire has vanished, and reality itself has bent to the architecture of your fears. You are alive, and yet only as a ghost within your own mind, watching the world while it watches nothing of you. If every strategy to survive has made you unrecognizable to yourself, who remains when the last fragment of quiet finally answers?